So hello everyone, and again, thanks for joining us today. My name is Adam and I'm on the CCaaS product marketing team. Joining me is Andrew Boone, affectionately nicknamed Dr. Boone, who's not only our senior manager of CCaaS sales, but he's also a demo master extraordinaire. He's seen this product inside out, kind of from every perspective, including from the perspective of different industry verticals, which of course is our main topic today. You know, how do you get into those verticals? How do you identify pain? How do you solve pain? We're also going to take a look at some real world vertical success cases. Super quick housekeeping, and we're going to jump in. As a reminder, totally welcome questions. Just please use the Q&A function to submit those rather than the main chat. Just helps us keep things structured and get to those questions more efficiently. Any questions we can't get to live today, we will follow up, as Craig mentioned, after the fact. And finally, again, also as Craig said, we'll be making this presentation available, I believe, in 2 separate video clips in the next couple of days. Okay, I think that's it from me. Without further ado, Andrew, I'll move us to the first slide and turn it over to you.
There you go. Now I'm officially not talking to myself anymore. Thanks, Adam. And thanks to Alex and Craig for an awesome presentation beforehand as well. I learned a lot that I didn't realize. So as Adam mentioned, we're going to talk about vertical positioning today. And vertical positioning is really important because it helps drive urgency. And we use the vertical and the specific pain points in each vertical to help your customers who don't already realize the pain that they're going through, help them identify that and maybe solve that problem. For those of you that were here last week with the one and only Joe Hairday, he wanted me to send his regrets. He's busy with something else this week. He will be back next week. He was actually supposed to fly to Channel Partners, but they canceled that down in Vegas, which is always fun to talk about. But he will be back with us next week. So for those of you that missed last week, or if you want a little rehash, we're going to do a quick recap of last week's session. And Adam, this is only going to take a couple seconds if we go to the next slide. Just last week, we talked about the packages and where to position them. So we talked about Contact Center Express, Pro, and Elite. High-level differentiators. Express is sold as a as a named agent licensing scheme. It has to be sold with your Elevate, right, or with your Unite phone. Contact Center Pro is an over-the-top concurrent billing model, so named agents don't matter, concurrency, but it's really voice-centric when you're talking about Contact Center Pro. So you get all of your custom and historical reports, you get skill-based routing and all of those other great things, and you do have the ability to add other channels like chat, email, SMS, things like that as add-ons. And obviously at a certain point with too many add-ons, you're going to really just qualify for the Elite package, which is every feature function that we can bring to the table, including, schedule manager, CRM integrations, quality evaluations, those sorts of things. So the next 3 slides, which are going to be shared with you guys at the end, if you skip through these, Adam, they're really just reference slides. So some Pro, Elite, and Express reference material for you guys just to consume, have it in your back pocket when you need it. And for the to wrap all of this up, when we're sort of talking about this product, and this is the big thing that we kind of rolled into our presentation last week, differentiators, right? What is the differentiator with this product that you guys can tap into? It is a carrier grade solution. It is part of our all-in-one business cloud, which is critically important. And of course, you guys know the kind of stack we have these days. It's incredible. Obviously, you can buy it as a standalone or completely over the top because it is vendor and phone system agnostic. So for those of you with, customers with old Cisco's or new Cisco's and, Avaya's and other, PBX type phone systems, we can still deliver amazing functionality over the top. Contact Center Express being fully integrated with Unite is very cool. The cost certainty aspect where, bursting on demand, paying for, concurrent agents, not named agents, really giving customers your customers control over their costs, including moves, adds, and changes, right? Which I can't stress enough. And, this is a weird thing to say. I don't know if marketing stole this from a Chevrolet commercial or something. I'm not even sure where this comes from, but it's true. The people that have built this software from the ground up are industry experts because we all came from the same industry, right? I used to be a customer service manager for many, many years in a telecom company, and I understand the ins and outs of what happens inside a call center and how that can impact a supervisor, a manager, an owner, a customer, right? Putting all those pieces together. So we truly are built with those industry experts. And let's get on to the show for today, which is a blank screen. There it is. Positioning by vertical segment. I knew that's what it was, by the way. I just wanted to see if you're paying attention. So, and this is a funny thing when we talk about verticals, where obviously, customers want to know that you can satisfy their needs, their pain. And so they're always going to ask you for like-minded references, right? You're talking to a credit union, you're talking to the Jersey Shore Credit Union, the Federal Credit Union, and they want to know that the North Jersey Federal Credit Union is also using your service, right? That confidence that kind of comes with industry adjacent and whatnot, problem solvers. However, for your own personal knowledge, and don't tell anybody else this, it's actually the same software we give to people in finance, healthcare, retail, or public sector. And there really isn't too many differences. It's just how we position it for them, right? The nuances, the pain that it solves. Basically, anybody with a pulse and an 800 number and some customer needs could use this software, right? It's just identifying where they're going to need it the most. So banks, financial institutions, the easiest of all, because they really don't, money's no object generally, right? Cost isn't a concern. Customer experience is generally the main driver of any kind of software purchase. And so the ability to go to anyone in the financial sector and address their types of problems, which is, what we're going to talk about in some of these next slides, is really important. So yes, they still need reports and call recording and skill-based routing and CRM integration. Those are the same 5 things every single one of your opportunities is going to need. But we position it in a different way to banks where, we're able to improve their customer experience, right? We're able to save agents time on calls where we don't force customers to re-authenticate every time they get to a new agent, like little tiny pain points, integrating with their payment IVRs, that sort of stuff. So we're going to talk about in each one of these sectors in the coming slides, some of the pain points that we solve, some of the questions that you can ask them, and definitely some of the buying signals they're going to give you so that you can say, hey, I got something that you might want to buy. Healthcare, my favorite of all categories. You guys probably may have not picked up on this, but I am Canadian. So healthcare in Canada is a little different. It's not really a business. My doctor doesn't care if I show up or not. But obviously, with the rest of the world, it is a business. And when I talk to one of our patient care experts at one of our urology or cardiology clinics, the doctor, the manager of that clinic, they all have the same problem, which is they have a great phone system, but they really don't have a lot of data and detail on who's calling and why they're calling and what their outcomes are. And when your doctor loses a patient, right, because he couldn't book a time with you effectively and decided to book time with the doctor down the road, that costs you hundreds of thousands of dollars as a healthcare practitioner. So it's really important that we deliver visibility, but it's the same things, right? They need call recording, they need skill-based routing, they want some ERP integration, they certainly want detailed reports and maybe a disaster recovery plan. So retail services, obviously very similar. Logistics, auto dealers has been a great category for us lately because again, every phone call is valuable to them, right? And this is where things start to kind of make, I can't lose a call because it costs me money. These are the type of pain points that this kind of software is going to continue to solve. And in public sector, because we do so much business in the public sector, both north and south of the border, so Canadian and US government entities and municipalities, towns, et cetera, it becomes easier for you to present this product to other people in adjacent sort of towns and cities and municipalities, et cetera. I did a demo a few weeks ago for the mayor, the police chief, the fire chief, and all of the town council for a small town in Mississippi. And I had to do it in front of, we did it in front of everybody. And all of the, the councilors, the fire chief, the police chief, the mayor, they all had a say in what each individual problem was and their pain points. But that's the kind of, you wouldn't really think of that that way. Do those guys really need a call center? Of course they do, right? People call them for help, 601, 311, that kind of stuff. Next slide, please, Adam, if you don't mind. So a lot of this stuff I'm going to share with you guys today in these verticals, it's going to be a little bit of, understanding pain points and picking up on them, like when my patients complain about long wait times, or but I'm already overstaffed, so I need a better way to address those wait times. Or my patients are complaining about being transferred too many times before they get in touch with someone, right? Skill-based routing. When people start telling you these problems, we have the solution, and this is where you need to recognize, I don't have the reports to understand what clinics or practices need help. Most medical clinics, right, and we're talking healthcare here, you've all been there. You walk in, the same person you deal with as a walk-in is also answering the phone. And they're also going to the back and pulling paperwork. And, it's a difficult job. And some of them are administrators, some of them are nurses, some of them are just part-time help. But you need to be able to give people software and tools to be able to manage their job correctly. And sometimes with our tool, it's just reports. It's just providing visibility. If I can tell you that you're losing 25 calls a day are being abandoned in your queue after a 10-minute wait time. Maybe we look at that time and say, hey, perhaps we, add some agents to the queue, right? Or perhaps we do put some messaging in our queue, like, hey, Mr. Customer, please be patient with us. We're experiencing longer than average call times. Maybe offer them a callback option. Solution selling is truly what we do here. So pulling out these pain points, and if anyone talks about this in the healthcare vertical, right, these are some really good, cool triggers. So as I go through these, I'm going to pepper in some user stories that we've kind of come across over the years to kind of add some credence to this. But healthcare vertical, let's continue on from here. Finance. Finance is a tough one because obviously the cost and value of that call is very high to them. And we have a ton of finance in finance vertical. We talked about credit unions. They're an easy target. I find that credit unions are an underserved market for us. So they don't get the same attention that the big banks do from Genesis and maybe some of these higher end platforms, right? Because they're a little bit smaller, but they have the same problems, guys, right? Credit unions, they have the same problems as a bank. So having really good software, making your credit union easier to do business with and not forcing me to change, take my mortgage down the street to another big bank is really important to them. And really the big way, and at least in Canada, we have the same distinction, but credit unions, in order to distinguish themselves from banks, other than being credit unions and whatnot, they have to offer exemplary service, right? I mean, that's the differentiator. So being easier to do with, having that small branch mentality when you walk in, everyone knows your name kind of thing, that's the credit union sort of, play, if you will, and software can help them do that, right? When you're dealing with two disparate phone systems, you're dealing with 3 or 4 different software stacks, your customer comes from your telebanking IVR, you make them re-authenticate all over again. And I mean, it's just that frustration level, right? It gets a little bit annoying. So financial vertical, one of the things that makes it amazing is obviously the cost of the interaction is valuable to them. So spending $200 a seat on a CCaaS solution isn't a big deal if you can generate the value from it. Next slide, Adam. We're going to transportation logistics, and this is a weird one. I was on someone sent me a screen cap the other day when we were deploying a very, very large logistics company down in Indiana, and before we went in there, it was kind of a before and after shot. The agents, the brokers, they call themselves agents and brokers depending on where you go. They had 2 or 3 handsets on each desk, and you could see these guys with a handset in one ear and the other handset in the other ear, and they're trying to connect a broker with a driver, right? They're trying to get a load and sell a load, and there's a lot of moving pieces here, right? I mean, negotiating the best price, et cetera. One of the biggest gaps that these logistics companies have that we help solve is visibility. Because you have this environment that's almost like a boiler room, almost like a trading floor, it's tough to know, if you've got a guy with 3 or 4 calls on hold, he's trying to sell a load, and all of a sudden he loses these opportunities because he's not able to deal with them in an effective manner. Or just the ability to route the calls to the right agents with the right skills, write some of that information to a database, and then even, perform commission and billing reports on the back end. And we've done all these kinds of weird sort of solutions for logistics. And it's a bit of a beast. It's an underserved market, a little bit low tech in terms of the people, but high tech in terms of the needs and the amount of custom APIs and integrations we do with these logistics companies. So you'll find that the other thing with logistics is a lot of acquisition. So one logistics company will acquire another. Now you've got double the agents, 2 different phone systems, nothing's connected, everything is disconnected. You lose your visibility, right? So having an over-the-top solution to kind of come in and tie it all together. And then of course the ability to scale. So, if you're an Avaya customer, I just pick on Avaya because everybody does, starts with A. If you're coming into Christmas and you've only got 30 licenses, you got to plan ahead and make sure you've got the additional licenses you need from Avaya, and they usually make you pay for them for the year. Right? I'm going to need 100 around Christmas. I need 50 all year, but 100 at Christmas. And it's expensive, and it's, a little bit cost prohibitive and time consuming. But we support bursting, right? For your customers, I should say. So a requirement on bursting, which is non-existent in the CCaaS space, right? I've not come across another company that allows you to burst on demand the way we do. All you have to do is commit to a minimum of 50% of your max capacity. So let's say you have 10 agents. We'll allow you to burst to 15, right? If you have 20 agents, we'll allow you to burst to 30. And the rate that you pay for bursting is the same as you would pay if you'd committed to it. So you're able to consume the seats on demand. And cost certainty, right? You only pay for the actual seats that you use throughout the month. And I think those differentiators, especially in a price sensitive vertical like logistics and transportation, where you're dealing with drivers and low tech agents, et cetera, saving them money is one of your biggest paths to success. So there's my little logistics soapbox. What we got for next slide, Adam? Oh, the education vertical. This one is weird because, and we forget about education, but how do you tell? And this is really a real thing, but when someone calls in, how do I know if it's a new student, an existing student, an alumni, somebody with, I don't know, payment issues? Like, how do I know who's who? And often the hardest thing with and I don't know if you guys have experienced this, when you're calling into your Institute of Higher Learning, it's very who am I? Who am I to you? And for if you're a new student, press 1. If you're an alumni, press 2. And sometimes we try to flip this on its head, and instead of identifying who they are, sometimes we just want to identify what the problem is. You're calling about financial aid, press 1. If you want to make a donation, press 2. So when it comes to education, it's all about getting the caller to the right person, because all of these different departments, alumni, financial aid, existing students, and potentially new student recruitment, international and otherwise, are all different departments. This is a weird thing that we've uncovered in higher learning and education and universities. Also, it's not a year-round thing. So while some departments are year-round, like maybe the Alumni Association and student recruiting and things like that, other departments scale up and down and fluctuate quite a bit. And then the other big, huge differentiator with all of these education verticals is that each individual department, and there could be 6 to 10 in each university, they all have their own custom requirements and needs, and they all need their own custom IVRs, and they all need their own custom reports and dashboards. And that's very difficult to do if you have an on-prem PBX versus a hosted CCaaS type solution. So we're talking about seasonality. We're talking about getting people routed to the right person on the first try. And by the way, we could use CRM integration for that, right? And we've got a Microsoft Dynamics installation. The customer calls in, student calls in, puts in their student ID, and we route that to the right person because we know who that person is based on an ID. So lots of cool things there at the education level. But most importantly, because all their problems are the same, as I've been telling you, it's important to know that we have a lot of education customers. We have many universities in both Canada and the US and higher institutes of learning. Did I get that out right? Like, we have the Cleveland District School Board, right? K to 12. All of these, and they all have different kind of, pain points, but they're great to name drop when you're speaking to your customers. You've never done a school before? Well, in fact, we have done 75 universities, right? And here's the common pain points, which I'm sharing with you here, right? Is kind of how we address it. So I know I did a little bit high level on this. I could go on for days talking about pain points and how we address them. But Joe Hairday, because he's going to be back next week, he really wanted me to, I guess we're warning you, but we're going to be doing a series of deep dives into each vertical. Like, really, in each use case, what made us win and how we found, how we won, what problems we solved, so that you can take those verticals, those pain points, those use cases, those wins, and just replicate them across your customer base. And so we're gonna keep that in the back of your mind and look out for an invitation for next week. So some success stories. This is the part that I like talking about, because these are wins that we have. And even though we're going to share all of this with you at the end, the stories themselves tend to be, they change over time depending on who's telling them. So I'm going to share a few of these with you, but it's just really meant to give you some, confidence in each situation. So healthcare. We talk about this success case probably more than any, because it was definitely one that, it was all sweat and muscle on our side to win this deal. I think we're up to 750 platinum seats with LA County. So this is LA County, right? This is the general hospital. And the situation was they have a brand new Cisco across all of the clinics, all of the hospital. I mean, they went Cisco crazy. And each department, as you can imagine, the cardiology department, the radiology department, the urology department, they all have their own particular IVR needs. And when Dr. Whitehead, I'm just throwing out Dr. Whitehead's name again, when he needed something done with his urology department and his IVR, the IT response on the Cisco side was 6 months. 6 months before we can get those changes in. And of course, that's not acceptable. The other big thing he had, just long deployments being aside, had some real challenges with scheduling. And from what we understand, the different departments had different numbers, but this particular department had almost a 40% no-show rate on scheduled appointments. And they're using Cerner as their ERP, which is kind of a big application, and it's not easy to use, but it has some functionality with appointment reminders. But it's really it's not a real-time appointment reminders tool. So it sends out a message. You got an appointment, yes or no, and then based on that response, you can update your files. And so the 40% no-show was costing them a lot of money. So what did we do? One, we showed them that, Dr. Whitehead, that you could create a new IVR in minutes, right? And when I say minutes, I'm just going to skip this page out, Adam. When I say minutes, like, our IVRs are hosted in the cloud. Overnight, we can create a brand new IVR for you, individual for your particular, use case, which was important. And then we also gave them the tools to build it themselves if they wanted to. So we gave them some cost certainty there because it was, again, named concurrent agents, not named. We gave them all of our management features, of course, the dashboards and all that good stuff, so that they could see in real time and they could plan in real time, historically, et cetera. Outside of the Cisco, some of the clinics on the outside of the hospital were using different phone systems. So they weren't actually even part of the brand new Cisco upgrade. So there was an NEC in there, obviously. There was a StarTel. There was some AT&T Centrex lines. I mean, it's all over the place. But what are we able to do with this, over-the-top product? We're able to aggregate all of these, disparate phone systems in the cloud and deliver calls effectively. So really basically upgraded them all without having to upgrade them. Right now we're actually obviously a little bit double that. The MRR on this particular account is actually at 90K because we're a little over 700 licenses. Plus, we're expecting more licenses in 2020, as well as we're doing a deep dive Cerner integration with them as a partner. And I didn't really explain this very well, but the scheduling problem that we solved, the way we were able to do it is using the dynamic notification tool that we have on and please call me or someone if you want to talk about that further. But it allows you to outreach to customers, to patients, to schedule appointments. And our dynamic notification tool has a talk back option. So you might get a message from your doctor that says, hey, Andrew, you have a doctor's appointment with Dr. Potter, 2:00 on Friday. Press 1 to accept, 2 to cancel, or press 3 if you want to connect back and reschedule. And that ability to connect back live to an agent or a self-serve IVR and reschedule an appointment is how we were able to get those no-shows down to 9% from 40. And so I think that's an incredible story. We tell it a lot. It's got legs everywhere because we've applied the same use case to several other hospitals, Henry Ford, New York Presbyterian. I can't even remember the names all off the top of my head, but there's a bunch of them. Heartland Health as an organization. And it's the same use case, right? A lot of these hospitals, they're happy with their Cisco. They want an on-prem solution. They're going to keep their AT&T PRIs. I like saying that out loud because it's funny. But they still need all of this awesome functionality over the top, right? I have nothing against PRIs, of course, but they're somewhat limiting. Next use case, we're going to talk about financial. And, we have in this particular case, CI Financial. And, they do mutual funds, wealth management. It's not a bank, right? But they get busy around tax time in Canada, around RRSP time. Too many R's in that, I think. So their situation was similar. This is funny. I mean, they're Genesis users, right? And Genesis, let's call it what it is. It's probably the best platform on the planet. It's on-prem. It's a PBX. It's physical. You need a degree in Genesis to manage it, kind of like Cisco, but it's a really, really good solution. Why would they not be happy with it? Well, they didn't have the intelligence. They didn't have the master's class in Genesis to be able to make their moves, adds, and changes very quickly. And so they needed a solution to bring in over the top to deliver custom functionality exactly the same way Dr. Whitehead needed it, but we're doing it for our financial org. So instead of a 6-month, or actually in this case, it was more like a 3-month turnaround on the Genesis side, we turned that into a week or an overnight turnaround, right? Instead of having everybody go to IT as an entry point to get things done, now you can go to the director of client services, and the people that manage the software can actually make their own moves, adds, and changes and be in control of their own operations expense budget on a monthly basis. So this sucker's in around 21K just on the licensing only. That's at 120 platinum. They scale up and down throughout the year. The 120 is an average, but around tax season obviously gets a little bit higher. And they're one of the few customers that use our custom homegrown scheduling manager tool, which we used to call WFM. And they use that to manage their agents. They use that to schedule their agents, and they love it. Agents click on a website, they have an electronic schedule, they can do shift trading, it pumps out reports to their payroll system. Everybody's happy. So again, there's nothing secretive in what we did for CI Financial or LA County Hospital. I'm thinking you guys are picking up it's the same freaking things we do over and over again, but the confidence a customer will have knowing that you've dealt with somebody adjacent in their industry, it just goes a long way. So back pocket that one as well. Next slide, Adam. How are we doing for time?
Actually, we're right on point. We're aiming for 45 overall. I think with Q&A, I think we'll be well under that, Andrew. So we're looking good.
Good. Yeah, and I never, we've lost a few people along the way. I know this is a lot of content from the Office 365 to the CCaaS stuff. So I really appreciate you guys sticking around as long as you did. Last, you heard me talk about logistics. The company I was talking about earlier was not Global Trans. Just for the record, they don't have, they didn't have that phone situation. But Global Trans really, they do it all, right? So they have their fleet, right? They have the transportation, they have logistics management, so buying and selling loads, and they obviously have the freight brokerage and agents to manage all that. They do direct selling, channel selling through their agents, and obviously they have their own fleet of trucks. So they kind of touch all of the logistics sort of categories. They had Mitel, but they also had some other telephony in their different locations. Obviously, they were having some PRI outages. That happens. There were some SIP outages. There was some local phone and telephony outages that went sideways. And every second these guys are offline costs them money. These logistics companies do not mess around. And so we had to come in with obviously the critical use case is uptime, number one. Specifically because there's so much outbound, and knowing our being phone system and device agnostic at the application layer, the phone system goes offline and you're using our software, we give you different paths to success, right? You could still use a cell phone and not miss a beat. They didn't know what their staff were doing, so things like talk time and dials, which sounds old school, but they wanted to track it. You want to get rid of your bottom 10%, right, and replace them every month or every 3 months and improve. Obviously, people take different calls on different phones. We needed a way to tile that together. And just ultimately a place to bring everything as a central repository for knowledge where a single person can come and find the information that they need across all of their silly locations. So we ended up with the VP of truckload operations with the support of IT. And it's an often we thought you've seen this in the last one as well. There's always an operations person and an IT user and somebody with the budget along the way. But we came in over the top, really important. We did some SIP direct for some. We provided phones to other locations on a hosted PBX. We definitely provided the advanced IVR, the call center solution, and we gave them open reports. So we were able to customize a ton of reports for these guys along the way. The main reason they switched obviously was the metrics, right? The reporting, so that they can now start to understand what they didn't have any visibility on before, right? And drop calls, missed calls, weak agents, etc. So we displaced Mitel Integra and another phone system through acquisition. They loved our forecasting and they loved our forecasting. They're planning and upgrading to Platinum later in the year, because we've been throwing out chat and email and social media queues. And in fact, they've been testing it for a little while. So we're excited about that. And they hope that using those alternative channels is going to reduce their cost of an interaction, which is something they're very, very sensitive about as a user, right? Because again, it's logistics, the margins are low. Sur la table. Anyone who's been to a Sur la table or bought something online from their web store, they sell you, really cool high-end cooking utensils, devices, and I believe they also you can go in there and they'll give you cooking classes if you want to go in there with your spouse or significant other. Pretty cool use case because it's a retail solution, right? So they had 130 stores, but they also have a contact center solution, right? So the use case here is they needed a better way to tie in not just calls to the local stores, but calls to the local stores that also made it to customer service and vice versa. So they were just looking for a unifying solution. Obviously, we were able to bring in an IVR over the top. It ended up being just 70 gold seats, which obviously works out to about $6,500 a month. There's other revenue associated with Sur La Table with this partner as well, which is something like 700 phones, 700 PBX lines, and an NN, some sort of Ethernet connection, the LD, the toll-free numbers on each one of these stores. So we're not counting that in this particular success case, but it's important to point out that for every dollar in contact center, there's about $5 in telephony revenue in there in the back end, right? That we all get to sort of take advantage of. So their total revenue, the call center, the stores, the IT, the service desk, the headquarters is about $28K a month in MRR. So I think that that's an important, we're looking at about $8K in the call center side and another $28K across the rest of the org. So a nice little thing for you guys to put in your back pocket, right? Because it doesn't just stop with that contact center revenue. And the last slide is, Simon Fraser University, SFU, we call them, which is a great little acronym. It's a Canadian university, SFU. They're in BC, in your backyard, Adam, or in your former backyard out in BC, where all the hippies live.
I got one and one Squamish, yeah.
Oh, it's Squamish. Well, that's even better. So SFU is it's a smaller university. Could I say boutique? But they offer 150 programs, 30,000 students, 950 staff members, 120,000 alumni in 130 countries. So that's pretty good stats. So I already kind of gave you a preview of this use case, right? They have many departments and they're dealing with different types of people in each department. So there's a lot of different use cases, and they really needed a way to share those skills. Somebody in the alumni association can talk to somebody in the student recruitment side if the skill sets line up, and we have the ability to do that. In this particular case, we did an integration with Microsoft Dynamics, which was their CRM of choice. I'm not sure why, but I think Microsoft gives universities Dynamics for free or at a very discounted rate, because almost every university that I've dealt with uses Dynamics. It's a weird thing. I don't know if it's a real thing. It could just be coincidence, but there we are. So Dynamics, it's good to say we can do anything with Dynamics. So we can read and write data in Dynamics. We can make routing decisions through Dynamics. So we can really ensure skill-based routing. We offered them, well, obviously in this case, there was a PeopleSoft deployment. So we were able to prompt people for their student IDs in the IVR and then route the call accordingly, right? And if you didn't have a student ID, obviously we were able to do something different. It was a fully managed service for these guys, so they were really happy that we come in and make all of their moves, adds, and changes. Obviously, we reduced their costs, right? Because they were a Cisco deployment, so we saved them some money on training. We saved them some cash in terms of having to buy new handsets. And because we were able to integrate with some of their existing phones without rip and replace, we saved them some money there as well. Whereas other solutions were, promoting the full rip and replace. This is a very common theme when it comes to universities. Even though this one is a Canadian university, same sort of pain points, right? You really have a lot of different types of people calling for a lot of different types of reasons, not your traditional customer service type stuff. And getting those people to the right department and the right person is critically important. And you can't grow or scale if you're not sending the calls to the right person. If you got to make 7 internal transfers to get your problem solved, you're probably not going to call back again. So there's a whole bunch of upside, lower talk times, improved relations, et cetera, that are going to come back from that skill-based routing schema. I think that's our last slide, Adam. So we could probably put a pin in it and offer up some of the questions that may or may not have been presented.
Yeah,
Do we have anything?
We do have a couple, Andrew. Yeah, I guess in the interest of time, rather than display them, we'll just talk through them real quick here. Brad's got a good one here. This could be a toughie, but let's try. Do you know what system FedEx uses for their contact center and voice recognition? There's a tough one.
That is a tough one. And if they have voice recognition, it could be a higher end system like a Genesis, but it really could be anyone. It's tough to tell. We don't do business with FedEx, but that use case you're mentioning, if that's what's the interesting piece, like speech recognition, saying route me to sales, these are things that we can do inside of our system as well. But would be an interesting, I'm gonna have to put somebody on it. Mental note. What does FedEx use? Okay, good one. Thanks, Brad.
Another one has come in. This is a good one. How do ratios work on dynamic notifications? That's a great one, actually.
You control it. So every agent that you buy has 3 channels concurrent that we make available. We've extended that to 5 to 1, depending on the use case. So your dynamic notification outreach will be part of that seat capacity. So We can throttle outreach so that your inbound doesn't get, messed up, and that's something we work with customers on. So there's the ability to throttle how frequently the outreach happens so that you still have capacity for inbound. It could be scheduled after hours, or we can just, for the time period, increase your capacity. I've seen it as high as 10 to 1.
Oh,
The
wow.
standard is 3 to 1. Yeah, 10 to 1 is crazy. Standard is 3 to 1. 5 to 1 is manageable, right? But that would mean that potentially for every live call, you would have 4 people on hold per agent. So that's the consequence of that capacity. But in an outbound solution with dynamic notifications, we'll often play with that to make sure that it fits.
If I may, just a funny side story. I find it amusing that I once had this conversation offline with someone from product, right? No names.
Mm-hmm.
And the answer I got was the absolute max is 3. Don't even ask about going above 3 to 1. It is funny how you get,
Mm-hmm.
a slightly
Different
different.
answers. There are real use cases where a 5 and 10 to 1 are justified, and for sure there's a higher cost on our back end to manage those ports and
Right.
the capacity, but there's a higher cost to the customer or the user if you don't manage that capacity correctly as well. So we're very careful about those types of extensions. But that is a funny story.
Yeah.
Anything can happen, right? If you ask, you just have to ask the right person.
Yeah, that's Wild West. You got it. Okay, one more quick question. It looks like this is kind of sort of related. This person's asking about scheduled dialouts and how it compares to dynotes. I think I know this one, but if you want to run with that, feel free, sir.
Yeah, no, I mean, a scheduled dial out is like loading a list into an IVR and having a list and then having the calls fed to an agent.
Right.
So you load up a list of 1,000 people. We call the agent picks up the phone, and then it calls the first number in the list, and the customer answers, and we move on. Dynamic notifications sends out a message, and it sends out a custom message, either one that you've recorded or one that is text to speech, where the customer's name, the date and the time of the meeting, things like that can be very custom and personal for the user. So with dynamic notifications, you pick up the phone, you hear a message, a text-to-speech message in most cases. Hey, Andrew, you have an appointment, 2:00 Friday with Dr. Potter. Press 1 to accept, 2 to cancel, or 3 to connect back to an agent. If I hit 3, I'm back and I'm into a queue
There's
or
your
into a
agent.
payment
Right.
IVR. Exactly. And the nice thing about dynotes and dynamic notifications is, think about a payment IVR, right? Maybe you have a payment queue. You got customers that owe you money. You load up a list of these people, and it's, hey, Andrew, you have an overdue balance of $38.21. Press 1 if you'd like to make a payment. And then I go back to a payment IVR and I make a payment, or I go to an agent. The big difference, I think, is you can achieve things with dynamic notifications without involving an agent, right? If somebody just says, yes, I accept, that's a completed transaction. Your job is done. We've got a yes, we know the guy's coming to his appointment, or yes, we know he's paying his bill, and it never needed to speak to an agent. With a scheduled dial out, there's always a live agent to talk to, although we are able to do it in a blended environment where an agent can be part of an inbound and an outbound scheduled dial out queue, and we will feed them the outbound calls when they're not busy on inbound calls and vice versa. So those are the main differences. Hopefully that wasn't too over the top.
No, love the detail. That's perfect, man. Thank you.
No.
Well, I think that's all the ones we had. Well, listen, thanks to everyone for joining. Andrew, thanks for running us through this. Great presentation and narrative, as always. Again, really appreciate everyone's time. Look for those follow-ups. We'll get this recording out to everyone. Any questions that are left, we'll make sure we address those as well. Thanks again, everybody.
Thanks, Adam, and thanks everyone for sticking around. Appreciate it. I know this is time consuming.
All right, take care.